the alien group entered Earth's orbit, their precision honed through eons of space travel. Commander Voltrix of the Eden Confederation stood before the viewport of the ship, his radiant, shimmering skin reflecting his mood as he observed the blue planet beneath. This was his first diplomatic mission, and he was determined to represent the Eden ideals of order and structure flawlessly. Yet, he couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The humans, though primitive by galactic standards, were unpredictable. Voltrix had studied their records in depth, but their relaxed demeanor was striking, even unsettling. They were a species that flirted with disorder but seemed to thrive in it. On the surface, their reception had been overly warm. A human named David, their representative, had insisted that Voltrix's team bypass the sterile government facility that had been prepared for their visit, instead offering his private residence. Though puzzling to Voltrix, his superiors had instructed him to accept such gestures in the spirit of diplomacy. Now, standing in the human's modest living room, Voltrix felt the first stirrings of discomfort. The air was thick with various organic scents that wreaked havoc on his hypersensitive olfactory system. The walls were cluttered with an array of trinkets, mismatched furniture, and framed photos of smiling humans. But none of these oddities caught his attention for long. What truly unnerved him was the creature perched on a cushion, its amber eyes locked onto him. Despite its small size, its body exuded a quiet, yet palpable menace. It remained still, save for its tail, which flicked in perfect, rhythmic arcs, as though marking the passage of time. "Why is it staring at me?" Voltrix's voice, usually calm, betrayed a slight hint of anxiety. His skin shifted to a muted teal, signaling caution in Eden physiology. David glanced over at the creature and smiled, a disconcerting display of teeth. "Oh, Misty. She's just curious. Probably thinks you're interesting." Voltrix's skin darkened slightly. "This Misty is analyzing me?" David laughed, a carefree sound. "Nah, she just wants food." "Food?" Voltrix echoed, his translator adding a perplexing tone to his words. "This predator resides in your home in exchange for sustenance?" "She's not a predator," David said, chuckling louder. "She's a cat, and technically, she doesn't live here. She owns the place, and I just pay for it." Voltrix turned to his aide, Troik, whose limbs were tense, eyes fixed on the creature. "Troik," he whispered, "the entity emits an unusual energy pattern. I recommend caution." Misty yawned, stretching, and bared her sharp teeth in a manner that seemed almost calculated. Then, as though to confirm Troik's suspicion, she jumped down from her perch and began advancing toward Voltrix. Her amber gaze never wavered. "Is it approaching me?" Voltrix's voice grew sharper, his skin flickering in unsettling shades of green, a rare sign of internal turmoil. "She's curious," David said, casually waving his hand. "Just let her sniff your hand. That's how cats say hello." Voltrix took a step back. "Sniff my hand? For what purpose?" "To get to know you," David said as though the answer was obvious. "She's friendly, mostly." The commander's skin flashed an emerald hue, his version of a panicked expression. This friendly creature is clearly designed for subduing prey. It has claws and fangs. "Relax," David said, leaning casually against the wall. "She's just a cat. They're soft, cuddly, and occasionally demanding, but adorable." Misty stopped just in front of Voltrix, her body low and her tail wrapped neatly around her paws. She looked up at him with an unnervingly deliberate expression. "I disagree," Voltrix said flatly. "This is not adorable. This is unsettling." Before anyone could respond, Misty leapt forward, landing lightly on Voltrix's lower appendage. The commander froze, his body stiff as his skin cycled through a kaleidoscope of colors, finally settling on a pale lavender. Misty rubbed her head against his leg with disarming confidence. "Commander Voltrix, are you all right?" Troik's voice trembled with concern. "I am being accosted," Voltrix said tightly. "It is initiating contact." "What protocol applies?" David, clearly trying not to laugh, approached casually. It's called affection. Take it as a compliment. She's picky about who she likes. She likes me. Voltrix's voice rose in disbelief. This feels invasive, not complimentary. She's just saying hello in her way, David explained. It means you've got a vibe she trusts. Voltrix exchanged a bewildered glance with Troik, who remained frozen in place. What if it is testing your defenses? Troik whispered. Then I will have failed, Voltrix muttered. Misty, undeterred, made her next move with a swift leap, landing on Voltrix's shoulder. She kneaded his uniform with her paws, and Voltrix emitted a sound that Troik would later describe as a cross between a squeal and a warble. David, grinning, lifted Misty off Voltrix with practiced ease. All right, Misty. Let's not overwhelm our guest. Voltrix took several steps back, visibly regaining his composure. His skin returned to a steady aquamarine, though his voice remained tense. You allow this entity such liberties? It asserts dominance freely, and you do nothing. She's not dominant, David said, cradling Misty, who purred contentedly. She's just confident. Cats don't follow rules like we do. You learn to live with it. Voltrix studied the human carefully, his mind turning over this bizarre revelation. You willingly coexist with beings of such erratic behavior? David shrugged. Yep. That's just how cats are. They're part of the family. Voltrix's gaze shifted back to Misty, who had resumed her regal composure in David's arms. He made a note in his log, domestic earth feline, small, yet inexplicably formidable. Further study required. For now, he decided, it was best to observe from a distance. Still, a small part of him couldn't help but marvel. Humans, he realized, had an extraordinary ability to embrace the unpredictable. Whether that was an asset or a liability remained to be seen. The next day, the Eden delegation gathered in David's modest garden under the watchful eye of Earth's sun. David had insisted it would be a relaxing setting in which to discuss trade agreements. However, the delegation's attention was constantly drawn to the figure lurking in the background. Misty had perched atop a stone birdbath, grooming herself intermittently, but her eyes never left the Eden. Voltrix, seated stiffly in a folding chair, tried to ignore her, but her every movement sent ripples of unease through his skin. She is stalking us, Voltrix murmured to Troik. Look at the angles of her gaze. Troik's wide, reflective eyes shifted toward Misty. Commander, her energy signature is fluctuating again. I recommend heightened vigilance. David returned from the house with a tray of Earth beverages, setting it down on the table. You guys seem tense, he said. Misty's harmless. Just ignore her. Voltrix's skin turned bright green. That is not possible. Her presence is oppressive. David chuckled, passing out mugs to the delegation. She's just hanging out. You're overthinking it. She exhibits predatory behaviors, Voltrix insisted. Her posture, her watchfulness, this cannot be dismissed. Troik spoke up, holding a mug delicately. Perhaps humans have adapted to living with constant threat. Their culture appears to normalize such hazards. David laughed outright. Misty's not a hazard. She's a cat. Cats are playful, curious little things. You're reading too much into it. At that moment, Misty rose from the birdbath and glided through the grass toward the group. Her movements were deliberate and measured. Troik stiffened, and Voltrix's skin shimmered with violet streaks, a natural warning signal. She advances, Troik whispered. What does this signify? David, sipping his coffee, appeared unfazed. It probably means she's bored. Maybe she wants a snack. Voltrix turned sharply toward him. You mean to say she is motivated by hunger? Sometimes, David replied. Other times she just wants attention. Misty stopped a foot from the table, sitting down and curling her tail around her paws. Her amber eyes locked onto Voltrix, as if seeing straight into him. Voltrix stared back, paralyzed. Troik urged him in a low voice, do not engage. She may interpret it as a challenge. I am aware, Voltrix hissed through clenched teeth. Without warning, Misty jumped onto the table, landing between the Eden data pads and mugs. She has infiltrated the meeting space. Voltrix exclaimed, rising from his chair, his skin flaring a vivid turquoise. What does she intend to do? Relax, David said, reaching to gently remove Misty from the table. She's just exploring. But before David could intervene, Misty nudged a data pad with her paw, sending it sliding off the table and onto the grass. Sabotage, Troik muttered. Her disruptive tendencies are clear. David picked up the fallen pad with a smile. She's not sabotaging anything. She's playing. Cats knock things over. It's kind of their thing. Voltrix's skin darkened to a stormy purple. You condone this behavior? You call it play? David shrugged. Cats are naturally curious. It's how they learn about the world. Misty crouched down and began swatting at a spoon handle, drawing Voltrix's attention. Troik leaned in closer to the commander, his voice barely audible. Commander, this behavior is highly erratic. I suggest we terminate this meeting and retreat. We cannot, Voltrix replied through clenched teeth. Our mission requires continued engagement with human customs, no matter how baffling. Misty suddenly stopped. Her ears perked, and she sprang off the table, streaking across the garden with astonishing speed. The Eden watched, dumbfounded, as she captured a fluttering insect midair, landing gracefully with her prize held tightly between her paws. Remarkable, Troik said, his voice tinged with reluctant awe. Her precision exceeds that of most automated targeting systems. David smirked from his chair. Told you she was great. Voltrix watched as Misty released the insect, allowing it to flutter away before pouncing again. She reveled in the chase, her movements fluid and precise. She demonstrates advanced hunting behaviors, Voltrix muttered. Yet she does not consume the prey. Is this another form of play? Kind of, David said. Cats love to hunt even when they're not hungry. It's instinct. Troik noted, an instinct to exert dominance over smaller entities. David chuckled. Or maybe she just thinks it's fun. Voltrix's skin returned to a contemplative shade of silver. This level of unpredictability is unsettling. Yet, I am beginning to understand why humans tolerate it. Because she's adorable, David supplied. Voltrix nodded slowly. Perhaps there is merit in her philosophy. To navigate the universe with supreme confidence is an intriguing concept. Misty yawned and stretched, then padded over to Voltrix, rubbing against his leg. The commander froze, but this time, he didn't retreat. Troik whispered, she has initiated contact again. Shall I intervene? No, Voltrix replied, his voice low. This is acceptable. Misty purred loudly, her tail curling around Voltrix's ankle. David smiled, his gaze softening. Looks like you're part of her kingdom now. As the final evening of the Eden delegation's stay arrived, Misty had, true to form, become the enigmatic center of their experience. During a briefing session, she had commandeered Voltrix's chair, knocked Troik's data pad to the floor, and shredded an official document with a swipe of her claws. Despite this, Voltrix found himself oddly reluctant to leave her behind. As the delegation gathered to wrap up their mission, Voltrix prepared to speak. His skin glowed with iridescence. Before we conclude, I must address the fine entity known as Misty. David perked up, cradling his mug of tea. Oh, this should be good. Misty has proven to be an unparalleled anomaly in our studies of Earth, Voltrix continued, gesturing to the cat. Her behaviors defy categorization. Her motives remain inscrutable, and her energy readings suggest a complexity far beyond her diminutive size. Troik nodded solemnly. We have recorded no fewer than 17 instances of her initiating contact, each with a unique intent. She operates with precision. David snorted into his tea. Precision? That's one way to put it. Voltrix ignored him. We have learned much about humans through our interactions with this creature. Your species' willingness to coexist with such capricious beings speaks to a remarkable tolerance for unpredictability. David raised an eyebrow. Or just a soft spot for fuzzy troublemakers. Perhaps it is both, Voltrix mused. Misty embodies a paradox, chaotic yet deliberate, fragile yet formidable. She is, in many ways, a reflection of humanity itself. David looked at Misty, who was now grooming her tail, oblivious to the philosophical conversation. Well, she is pretty great. She is more than great, Troik said gravely. She is formidable. A comfortable silence settled over the room as the delegation reflected on the strange little creature who had upended their understanding of Earth. Misty, sensing the attention, stretched luxuriously and began to purr, a sound so soothing that even Voltrix found himself oddly calm. Troik whispered, "Do you think we could bring her back to the Confederacy for study?" David's eyes widened. "Hold up, you can't just take my cat." Voltrix raised a plating hand. "Fear not, David. We respect your bond with Misty. She shall remain on Earth, where she clearly belongs." David relaxed, scratching Misty behind the ears. "Good, because if you tried to take her, she'd probably end up running your ship." Voltrix considered this for a moment. "That is entirely plausible." As the delegation prepared to depart, Misty sauntered over to Voltrix, rubbing against his leg one last time. Voltrix looked down at her, his skin glowing a soft lavender. "Goodbye, Misty. You have taught us much." Misty meowed in response, her tail flicking as she turned and padded away. Voltrix watched her go, a strange mix of relief and regret washing over him. David walked the delegation to the door, shaking hands with Voltrix. "Safe travels, Commander. And don't forget, if you ever come back to Earth, Misty and I will be here." Voltrix nodded. "I shall remember. Farewell, David, and thank you for sharing Misty with us." As the Eden boarded their vessel, Voltrix glanced back one final time at the small house, and the creature that had so thoroughly upended his understanding of humanity. Troik spoke softly. "Do you believe all humans are like David?" Voltrix hesitated. "I believe humanity is unique in its unpredictability. If Misty is any indication, their capacity for coexistence is limitless." The ship ascended into the stars, leaving Earth behind. Yet, as Voltrix journeyed back into the cosmos, he couldn't shake the image of Misty, an inscrutable, small creature who had forever altered his view of an entire species.